They're going to tokenize, for example, Tesla stock, put it on Arbitrum. Really, the benefit would be that investors get to see all of the stock into one place. So today I'm talking to you about Robinhood and how they tokenize 200 stocks, basically taking stocks and putting it on the blockchain. The settlement problem, how they built it with Arbitrum, but I think it might be something else. The MBS playbook, why I think stocks are going to be as collateral to create money, and then the settlement layer solution, why I have a proposition on why I think it's going to transition to something like XRP, XLM, XDC, or HBAR. Robinhood is just issuing stocks on the blockchain. And as we know, that just means real world assets. And real world assets are things that they can borrow against, and that creates money. This is important because blockchains like Arbitrum, I believe it's going to at least create liquidity on the chain, which will move money to these stable coins, which pushes up the price. So a US listed stock and ETF, it's tokenized and put on the blockchain with future plans to deploy them to Robinhood's own blockchain. And that kind of goes back to one of my past videos of having each bank is going to have their own personal subnet for investor privacy. So this is what I think they're going to market it as, but I don't think it might end up like this. I think your local bank might become the settlement layer. They're going to tokenize, for example, Tesla stock, put it on Arbitrum. Really, the benefit would be that investors get to see all of the stock into one place. And that's kind of where I see XDC excelling. But let's say they use Arbitrum. So you could borrow against the stock, you got the collateral, kind of like your margin account. And I think they might use some type of settlement layer with XLM, XRP, or XDC. And the reason why is this is ISO compliant. But really the benefit would be, I don't want to sell my coins and I want to borrow against my stock, use this as a tier one asset potentially. And yeah, you basically cash out in some type of settlement vehicle of cash or some type of stable coin. So these are all very hypothetical scenarios. So this should not be taken as truth, but this is what I think might happen. And this is where I see the push. Retail buys the tokenized stocks. Those get bundled into securities really for institutional borrowing. In my opinion, the benefit would be that an institution, someone above Robinhood would look into their balance sheet, look at the blockchain of Arbitrum that only they see, they then could borrow against it. So the name of the game would be to bundle a lot of these stocks. But for example, let's say we had a blockchain Tesla, blockchain Apple, one-to-one share, similar to how we have a stable coin on the blockchain. And really, that's just another way so they can borrow one-to-one. And as I showed you in my last videos, we can take that same coin and put it on other layer 2 solutions. So like I said, the ballooning effect might be infinite. So get to the point, Joshua. Well, I think, this is what I think, they might bundle these shares together and they get the fidelity of looking, hey, this Arbitrum blockchain for Robinhood has this many shares on hand. And as you know, in this fractional banking system, they don't necessarily have to have all the reserves, and it might be different for a brokerage. But I think what might happen is they might bundle it up and they can sell it as a security. And as you know, the RWA is a security. You can put anything as a security on the blockchain. And this is uncharted territory for the banks. So I think this is just another debt vehicle to generate liquidity, which might push up the price for you. So ISO 20022 compliance is that's something that I'm really focused on. This is important because the SWIFT system recently adopted it and they went away with the old protocol. The rails need native assets. So more volume, more demand, price goes up because I think you'll have these XLM, XRP, XDC, and even HBAR as this underlying asset that's going to support the infrastructure layer. So explain this. Well, stocks, as you know, are being tokenized. Real estate, huge multi-trillion dollar global market. Same thing with bonds. All of this is moving towards some type of settlement stack. So the payload is either USDC, USDT, RLUSD, all of these basically stable coins. And really the name of the game with those is it's just another debt instrument which generates liquidity, and liquidity is money. So the native asset is the rails, and this is why everyone's so focused on this. The focus really is they see these and they're like cross-border payments, and really what that means is just the settlement vehicle for these real world assets. And I'm really trying to break that down because this narrative of XRP is going to be some crazy price. Right now it's fluctuating like nonstop. And don't click off. I'm trying to explain this in a simple way where real world assets is the cross-border payments. What are you transferring? What are you paying for? Like what are they sending? Like right now, cross-border payments is just a vehicle like any other vehicle, like the US dollar. So I personally see these more as reserve assets and the underlying infrastructure layer for these stable coins to facilitate the real world asset trade. I'm just going to talk to you. Arbitrum, I think, is just something that's familiar to the engineering team. Remember, these are just people that are building these subnets. Arbitrum is good, but I don't think it is the best solution. I like XDC or even HBAR because they are ISO compliant. Everyone loves the ISO compliance because the banks are adopting it. This is the infrastructure layer, but Arbitrum couldn't work. That's why even we're seeing assets on chain with Solana. It doesn't really matter the blockchain as long as it's a vehicle to generate liquidity. I'm going to show my simulator again because this is important. Really, the benefit of putting assets on chain is to generate debt, which generates money, which in my opinion pushes up the price of the underlying asset, which is the coin. You can have bonds, titles, and any type of CBDC, and you see this across the world with the central banks. You have the basically reserves on hand. This is just another vehicle that they can say, we have these securities on hand. Look, here's the proof. It's on the blockchain. XDC has the know your customer for the relays. But one of the benefits is they can have a private blockchain. And I personally like to talk about how I think banks are going to like private blockchains because you're not going to want to show all your assets on hand for the entire world to see. So what I think might happen is everyone's trying to explore the blockchain because everyone's making a lot of money. But I don't know which blockchain is going to prevail. I think the ISO compliance is really the name of the game, especially since the SWIFT system moved and adopted it recently this year. I really want to track the liquidity of it, and that's kind of the point of this channel. I just like showing you the infrastructure and what these banks are doing. I personally think it's going to be a very different approach for each bank. We might see one system adopting Ethereum and another system adopting Solana and the central banks adopting XRP. But we're going to explore it together, and that's kind of the fun of it.